Welcome to Learning in the Making. I'm your host, Aran, and as you can see, I have a little bit of a different setup today. I am in my kitchen at home, and I am joined by Viev, one half of Experience Relish, all the way in Detroit. Welcome, Viev.
I am LeGenevieve. I am one part of Experience Relish. We are based here in Detroit. I do business with my business partner and partner in love. Her name is Brittany. And so we are a social organization, so we love giving back to the community. Our catering company is focused on locally sourcing as well as being globally inspired. And so we take our childhood flavors and experiences that we had as a child and then incorporate that into our travel experiences. We had the opportunity to go to India. And so we created Indie Soul. And so today, I'm just excited to be here and show you some real lifelong skills.
I'm excited to learn. I've already been learning so much from you. I'm excited to learn some more. So can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to be making together today?
Yeah, so today we are going to be just doing a basic vegetable broth. And I find it super cool because as a kid growing up, my mom would make boiled chicken and rice. And when I finally went to culinary school, I realized that she was making chicken stock in the same sense. And so what I've learned over time is that having a broth, which goes such a long way, like you can use it in sauces that you create, where there's like a cream sauce, making gravy. So any of those your favorite items that you love that are hearty typically starts off with a broth. And so why not learn how to make your own broth, which is like the essentials of making food and not waste. So there's things in the refrigerator that, like terms of vegetables that are on their kind of on their end, and you would typically throw them in the trash. You can throw a broth together and actually make a broth that you can freeze and use at a later point. Okay, so for today, we are going to need first to start off with a cutting board. For kitchen safety, you want to make sure you have like a wet paper towel or a towel underneath your cutting board so it doesn't slide from you. We're going to need a stock pot, something that can hold at least about 3 to 4 quarts of water. We're going to need some vegetable oil. We are going to need, I call it like my mise en place bowl or like a mise en place plate. Mise en place meaning everything in place or everything in order. We're going to need a measuring cup. Have a measuring cup. A spatula to stir our items when we get to that saute part. We're going to get a tasting spoon. If you're a person that likes to taste more than once, then have multiple tasting spoons. Because we, in our new thing, we want to limit as many germs as possible. And then we were going to need our vegetables or whatever you have in the refrigerator. So the vegetables I have today are bell peppers, an onion, a garlic, and carrots. And then last but not least, some salt and pepper because those go a long way. And whatever is your favorite like house blends of spices. So I've created a house blend that is Italian based. And if you have some fresh herbs laying around, you can use those as well. That's it. And then I'm just being a little extra because, composting is in. And so I have a bowl where I can just throw my scraps in. And they're just not like cluttering up my cutting board.
All right. Well, what is step one? Where do we start?
Okay, so we're going to just start with a little bit of kitchen safety, starting with just making sure we first wash our hands. We want to make sure we have a clean apron on. Just knowing that if you perhaps start a grease fire, you want to throw some salt or baking soda on it and never water. We always want to clean as we go. So wipe anything that you're not using, move it out your way. And when tasting spoons, like I said, make sure you have an extra one because we definitely want to add our extra germs into the broth. And then make sure you have a towel. So on my apron, I have a nice kitchen towel because it gets kind of nasty when you're just wiping your hands all over your clothes. So we want to be as clean as possible. I'm definitely a victim of not having a towel. So With that, we'll start with a little bit of knife safety. So with knife safety, you want to make sure that we always have a sharp knife. It's very, very important. Most people cut themselves because they have a dull knife, not actually because of having a sharp knife.
Mm.
And we're going to learn, so we can get started with, let's wash our hands really quick.
Okay.
And then we're going to start with the onion.
All right, all right.
All right, so we're going to start with our onion. And this is where I can show you about our bridge and claw method. So we want to place, I like to cut the bottom of the onion off first because that gives me stability and balance. So anytime you're like cutting a vegetable that doesn't have like flat surfaces, you always want to kind of create you a flat surface. So I'm gonna start by taking a vertical cut towards the bottom.
I want to cut that piece off.
Cut that piece off because you're creating you some stability. And so then you're going to turn your onion and put it down on that flat surface that you just created for yourself. So the claw method was to make sure that you have like a C cup shape where your fingers are tucked, your thumb is tucked on the side as well. And then you take your knife and take a vertical cut straight down. And this is the most important one. This is like how, because most people when they cut with their fingertips kind of out, trying to hold it, but that's how you kind of cut yourself. But when you make sure that you're gripping the item that you have with your claw, think about it like, claw.
Nice.
That gives you a nice grip. Mm-hmm. So when we do go into our next step, after we've created this surface for us with our onion, we're going to do the next method called a bridge method. And so with the bridge, it's important that you place your knife down first, but you're not cutting through. You're just placing it where you would like to cut it, which will be through the root at the top. We're going to make a vertical cut through the root.
Okay.
And so then once you place your knife down, the bridge is taking your hand over the knife and steady in a stable hold.
Okay, I'm trying to see if I'm doing this right.
We want to put the knife down, put your knife first.
Okay, put the knife first.
Yeah.
Okay, knife first.
Right.
Okay. And then the claw goes over.
Right.
Okay.
And then you cut straight down. And that's the bridge. And you want to do knife first because you don't want to like create your bridge and then start stabbing yourself, trying to wiggle your knife underneath your bridge. Mm-hmm. So then we have the bridge. So then I'm going to, because I still had skin on my onion, so I'm going to take the skin off and put that in my little compost bucket that I have to the side. And so what's really important too with cutting onions, the outside of onions always has dirt that comes with it. So you take your towel and just kind of wipe your board down so you get that dirt off, and then wipe your knife down as well. And so you always want to wipe your knife away from you with the blade, with the sharp part away from you as well. Just give it a nice, just quick wipe down. And that's just to make sure that we're removing any bacteria that may be lying on our onion.
Okay.
Okay, so now we've just created us a new flat surface for our onion. So we started off up and down. Now we're going to take one half of that onion and lay it flat where our root end is to our left hand.
Okay, flat to where our root end, left hand. Okay.
Yes. So then we're going to take our knife and we're going to have the claw on top, and we're going to create some horizontal lines going from the bottom of the onion up to the top where our hand lies. And you don't want to cut all the way through, just enough to where your knife stops and you're not forcing it anymore.
Okay.
Yes. And then you're going to create you a bridge over your knife.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to make vertical lines going straight down across the onion. So you start in the middle, and then you kind of work your way to the outside of it. You can go about not a full inch apart, probably like a 1/4 inch from line to line. And that looks great.
Thank you. Oh, I lost a piece.
So now you want to create your claw method on top of your onion. Yes, and then take your knife and do vertical cut straight down from the beginning of your onion, not where the root is. You can move your knife up just a little bit. Yeah, and then you're going to work your knife backwards towards the root from that way. And this is how we create dices. So we're pretty much creating a small dice here. And the thickness of your lines, when you do your vertical lines or your horizontal lines, will give you a small, like a fine dice to a small dice to a large dice. And then you can take your chopped pieces and place them into your bowl that you have to the side. And if you like, you can scoop it with your knife. Like just take your knife and yeah, scoop it right up.
Okay.
And if you want, you could tuck your fingers just a little bit more.
Okay.
Like yeah. That. Like that. Yeah.
Okay.
That way that when a knife bumps up, it's not bumping your nails, it's actually bumping your knuckles.
Mm. Okay.
So for my carrot, you can just take small cuts from the bottom of the carrot, turn it to where the root end is facing your, yes. So the cool thing about, with cutting too, when you're doing your knife, I know you can probably see me. So this is a good way to hold it to make sure you're stabilized and gripping it. Like my thumb is like holding it for me. My index finger is helping me grip on this side. And then it's a rocking motion. And that way you're not putting too much pressure within your wrist. You can see where I'm doing my claw method, and I can bring my claw method all the way to my knife. And then I'm just going to do my rocking motion, making small cuts and letting your claw will really guide how big your cuts are too, because it will stop you from cutting even like too big. And you can see my carrots kind of fall all over the place. I don't have celery today, but what we are in the middle of creating too is a mirepoix. And a mirepoix is the French term for carrots, onions, and celery. That's typically the base for any broth that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with my bell pepper, what I like to do for me, it's take a vertical cut straight down and cut the bottom off, the base, to build me some stability. I'm all about stability. Mm. And so once I cut this to get me some stability, I know that in between each line bears that white line typically in your bell pepper, and I can even open it so I can show you like this line here has the whiting inside of it, like that white line. So I know that I can cut in between the lines and not get that white part of it because it's not needed. And so once I cut that, I take my knife and I slide it underneath that a white line that may have been closest to that first cut that I took, and then just have my knife run around the base of it.
Wow, that was so smooth.
And so now, and I still got some white lines, but I can break that down and I don't have as much. And this is a cool, just a trim off the white part. The white parts kind of have some bitterness to it. That's why I try not to keep it in there. And if you want, you can just take your hand and just peel it out.
Okay.
Okay. So then with my bell peppers, I'm going to do a dice. And the way to do a dice is you start off first with doing, and I'm wiping my knife down. You start off first with doing julienne cuts. So you see I have my claw, and I'm taking just 1/2 inch cuts lengthwise to get small cuts.
Nice.
So then once I have my long lines, I turn them back to where now I can cut them at the width. So I'm back to my claw, and I'm just rocking my knife to create dices. And you can see that my claw is determining how big I can make my dices. And so now I have small dices. So what I like about garlic, especially for broth, is that you don't have to cut it. What you do, I'm going to wipe my board down again.
Okay.
What you do is you take the back of your knife, place it on top of the garlic clove, and you take your palm and just pop it. So when you pop it, the skin actually splits itself, and now it's easy to peel.
Okay. Let me try that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my favorite part. When I teach the kids at Detroit Food Academy, which is a after school program to show youth how to cook, this is like their favorite part. Claw, do your hands in a claw at the top, and then take your palm, the back of your palm, so you look like and then just pop the back of your knife. Yeah.
Okay, I see some skin coming off. And now
probably easiest you peeled the garlic in a while. Garlic is good for you when you're sick. You swallow like a small piece of garlic, it helps take the bacteria that's in your body out. I feel like broths are the most easiest thing that you can teach yourself, and you get lifelong lessons because you're learning how to do knife cuts as well as learning how to make food and not waste. These are when you build these broths as well too, this could be a soup. The broth itself could be a soup for when you're sick. Something just to feed yourself because you're hungry, but it has a lot of the nutrients from the vegetables that you put in there.
What inspired you to get into cooking?
So my story comes in a twofold. type of stage. So during the holiday times, you know, that's like when a lot of our families get in the kitchen and burn it down, not literally, but like cook almost everything in the house. And so uh, my grandmother and my mother, they were not the ones that felt like kids did not belong in the kitchen. They definitely had you in the kitchen. They had a stool for you to wash dishes if you needed to. And so during the holiday times, I would just hate to have to wash the dishes that were left over. I'm like, I don't want to wash these big pots. Why? And so I remember going to my grandmother complaining one time, like, I just don't like having to wash the pots. And she's like, well, if you learn how to cook and clean as you go with me, then you don't have to do the leftovers. Like the leftovers are for the people that have just been fed and didn't spend all that time in the kitchen. I'm like, well, I'll see you next holiday. And so, from there, I just got in the kitchen and started learning the different things that she could do. And it was just, she just blew my mind. Like my grandmother could like peel a sweet potato with a knife. I still haven't mastered peeling a sweet potato with a knife. Like I just don't know how she does it. And so when I got to college and started getting into food marketing, which is what my degree is in, I started working in grocery stores, and my particular grocery store had kitchens in them. So I felt like throughout the day, I would find myself back in the kitchen. So what are you making now? I got to the point where I was kind of like frustrated with asking those questions that I was like, I'm gonna go to culinary school. And everybody was like, culinary school? I'm like, yeah, I gotta learn the foundation. I wanna know. And not saying that everyone has to learn how to go to culinary school at all, because you can pick up a recipe book and just read your way through it and really self-teach yourself. But I just really wanted to learn the French, like how the French way was doing it, because that's what I thought I needed. But after finishing, I realized I didn't need it. I just needed to keep reading. But anyway, I started to get into sustainability and like growing, and because that's what they were teaching us in culinary school, and it felt such a relief to kind of be ahead of what's coming. And kind of knowing that all of the things that I used to pick up in a grocery store, like mayo, broths that I would buy, I can make myself. And like the satisfaction that you get from being able to make your own food from scratch is just so rewarding. Like it's just another level of sustaining for yourself. And so with food, it's a life skill that you can make money with at any point. You don't have to be a chef for your life, but if you ever get in a pinch, you can put some meals together and sell them. You can, as a kid, it's very crucial to feed yourself. You never know what may be going on in the family, and those little life burdens like lifts a lot off your mom or your dad or your grandmother. I know that my mom was a person that worked 2 or 3 jobs. And so because I have the skill to cook, I would have food for her ready when she got home, because I had taught myself how to cook. And a lot of it really started for me going and picking up like tomato sauces in the grocery store and like kind of reading the ingredients. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go buy them and see what I come up with. And cooking is a never ending thing of learning. Like there's always something to learn about food, just different methods, different cultures. And yeah, and as I continue this journey and like kind of understanding our ancestors and the things that they made from nothing, I'm like, man, I feel in a good space. And I feel like it's great to keep teaching these skills to youth and keep teaching them even to adults, because there's some adults that like shy away from the kitchen because they don't know what to do. And it's just starting. It's just starting. So just having those few knife and kitchen safety skills and just learning simple things that can carry you such a long way is it's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I hear so much like curiosity and discovery in in the story of your journey, and just like desire to really learn deeply about this, and the way that cooking for you is connected to um, so many things. It's connected to family, it's connected to ancestry, it's connected um, to sustainability, and um, like what sounds like, like community well-being, like being able to feed ourselves, feed each other, feed our communities. So I really dig that. Thank you for sharing.
It did. It absolutely. And then there's one thing that's connected to that it didn't click to me until I was an adult, and that's STEM. So like the science, the math of it. It cooking is very chemistry and biology based. There's a lot of different chemical reactions. Like I'll give an example. Boiling eggs. When I was a kid, I was told to boil the eggs until you saw the gray in the egg. Like that signified that it was done. And so I remember my first time we're boiling eggs in school. I'm like, oh, I got this. As soon as the gray come, I'm good. So I present my eggs, and my teacher's like, did you finish reading the egg cookery? I'm like, no. Actually, I did not. He's like, okay, so actually the gray is a chemical reaction that's happening within the egg. So that's actually an overdone egg, and you kind of like created a chemistry mechanism within inside your egg. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Yeah, so I didn't know how to do that. So, it's just a lot of things. And a lot, like when you're cooking, air and time and humidity, all of that plays a role in the things that you cook. So that's a life lesson. That's always like a continual thing. So I'm like, man, I should have paid attention to chemistry a little bit more when I was in high school. We can go ahead and get the sauteing if you don't have anything else to cut down. So, and with your herbs, you can just throw those in whole. We can just turn our skillet, our pot on to a medium-high heat. So I'm at like a medium-high heat. The flame is not really high. I'm going to take some olive oil. Because we have a lot of vegetables, we're going to put enough oil to cover the bottom of the pan. That's typically like 2 to 3 tablespoons. I'm going to take my oil and just pour it into the bottom of my pan. So a good way to test your oil is to sprinkle a dash of flour in there. It's okay, you don't have to have flour now. I just wanted to tell people that because most people will throw water in their oil. But if you can feel some heat at the top of your skillet, you can go ahead and throw your vegetables in there.
Oh, yeah, it's going. I might need to turn it down a little. Wait, this already smells amazing.
Yes. And so for those at home that may not have fresh herbs, you can always use Italian blend seasonings, or you can use dried oregano, dried basil, dried thyme, or even rosemary. Like any of your herbs that you have dried, those are great to use. I'm gonna take my spatula, give it a little stir. And once I get them in, I like to add a pinch of salt just so I can start building up making sure that it has enough flavor. And granted, it doesn't have to be salted. Broth doesn't have to be salted at all. Because if you're using it in something else, you'll probably salt that as well.
Good to know.
And it's nothing that we really have to cook all the way down. We just want to get a nice saute on it because when we put the water in there, it's going to boil as well. So we're just doing the saute part to extract some extra flavors out of there.
Okay.
So then like your favorite dry herb spice blends, you can add that right now too.
Okay.
I have my little mixture that I created. I added a little red pepper flakes in mine.
A little spicy.
Yeah, I like a little spice. And I can smell your green onions from over here. Like I know that pot is smelling delicious.
It really is. It really is. And those mushrooms look delicious.
Yes, they do look really good. And so I'm at the point where all of my vegetables have been sauteed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to put a quart of water in here, which is 4 cups of water. A quart of water actually can feed 2 to 4 people. You can either have a half cup of broth or you can have a whole cup of broth. And there's 4 cups to a quart. This is where I say the math part comes into play with cooking. And then even in this point, you can take your tasting spoon and just kind of see if if it's where you want it to be, because then we'll taste it again in like 10 minutes, yes, to see if the salt level is where you want it to be. Now, I don't think I'm going to make mine a like well salted broth. I think I'm just going to make it an unsalted one. But this lets you know what you're kind of like picking up in there. We're going to bring it to a boil and then let it simmer for like 10 minutes. When you want to get the deepest depth in your broth, you go 45 minutes. You don't need to go any longer than 45 minutes, because then you just have like vegetables that are non-existent at that point. So another reason why I got into making broths was because I love ramen noodles as a kid, but it's definitely not the most healthiest thing to eat. And so, and I can. Yes. So it don't look like you're just talking to a pot of boiling. I tried to find a healthier way to make ramen noodles on my own. And so as we all know, it always starts with that broth, but it's really that spice packet. So I would create like a little spice, something similar to this, onion powder, like garlic powder, poultry seasoning, when I ate meat, to kind of create that dry spice. And then I would just put it in a broth, so I can have a healthier version of ramen noodles.
I love
so that's what I really like started to learn how to cook. And it was really finding a balance between processed foods, which are all of the things that are a lot of additives that are added to things to preserve them, but they're not that good for us because they don't digest well within our body. And so I started trying to find alternative ways to eat the processed foods that I loved, but in a healthier way that was better for like an intake into my body. Which is a balance. Everything comes with balance.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate that piece around like what does it mean for food to be processed? And I just think you gave a really lovely description, particularly around like the additives that don't digest well or quickly in our bodies.
I like to talk about like how to shop, like what works, like what's really good for us. It's really good to kind of buy in season. But if we can't buy in season meaning like corn is best grown in the summertime if you're not in a climate that produces heat all the time. So in California, you probably get corn, like you can have corn all season because like all year long, just because of the heat that you have there. Whereas Michigan, it gets cold here, so we find our best corn in the summertime. Spring peas are good in the springtime. Asparagus. But when you can't find those items and you really are in like wanting them, always better to either buy organic, or when you're reading the can of whatever it is, it just says the ingredient like black beans and salt or nothing, like hopefully no salt. But if it is salt, that's probably the only thing that they use to preserve it. to keep it holding stable. But beyond that, buying dry beans are better than buying canned beans. Buying frozen corn or like frozen spinach or broccoli is better than buying the canned broccoli or spinach. Well, I actually haven't seen any canned broccoli, but any of those vegetables that you like are better when you buy them frozen versus trying to buy them canned.
Because the canned have the additives.
The can has the additives, unless it says organic and it's just like two, like it's literally the ingredient in like water or the ingredient in salt. So when it comes to like reading labels and you're looking at processed foods, if they're starting to get to words where you're like, I don't know how to pronounce this, or what is red color or red dye, those are typically things that we can't digest well within our system. And it kind of like sits on us. And things that start to sit on us create other health problems for us. And I'm not a health guru or anything. These are things that I'm learning right now from experiencing a family member that that got sick. And so we had to start to learn what different things that was healthy for their body versus the processed food. And so it's been a lot of label reading recently. And so as I've been learning, I've been trying to like kind of share how can we enjoy the things that we love, but in a more conscious way. I wouldn't even say healthy because we don't like healthy is in a definition of everyone. And it's in the eye of the beholder, I would say.
For sure, yeah. But conscious, right? Like, and then choosing, like making choices,
Yeah.
and having like that, the knowledge and the just, I don't know, like wisdom or discernment to just make choices
Yeah.
that feel in alignment with whatever that person is going for. Yeah.
Exactly. Just and just finding any of our things that we love. Like if we like cake, it's better to make a cake from scratch than to buy a box cake. Baking cookies from scratch, or just things that can give us a longer life. And so when people talk, like I love having that conversation where people say, well, our grandparents, they ate meat or they ate this back in the day. And I'm like, they did. But a lot of our family and our ancestry knew like about where their food came from. So if they had pig, the pig was probably running around in the backyard like earlier that week. And it fed the community, or they had chickens, or like a lot of our families in the South, even in the North, grew their own food. Like they had their own things in the background. So when you're able to be the source of your food, you know what you're intaking. And so that I've been loving to learn about our history, and just we got those years on us because we knew our source of our food. So it's just really important to kind of know where our food comes from and finding things that are as minimally processed as possible. Are you boiling? Are you at a boil? Or are you at a simmer?
It boiled and I turned it down to a simmer.
Yeah, I'm simmering too. So let's say we'll just go 5 more minutes of simmering and then we'll try it again.
Okay.
Something that we definitely don't like I said, you can go from 15 minutes to 45 minutes depending on how much you're in a rush for the broth. 15 minutes with having sauteed extracts a lot of flavor out as well. Okay. 45 minutes will give you the most depth. But after the 15 minutes, you can really kind of see where your salt levels are. And sometimes you do want to add a little bit more salt to like kind of pull out the flavors as well. You want to try?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's simmered down in here.
Let's see. Now I have like a dark color to my broth because my mushrooms have
Yeah, that
gone.
looks fire. Okay. I think I might go in with a little more salt, but I'm loving the flavor.
Yeah, those my mushrooms are really kicking in there. And I think I'm hitting mine with a little bit more salt too, just so I can see what extracts out of there. And typically like a tablespoon of salt for a quart or cut in half of water would help you get there. Okay, so we're gonna grab a glove or something that we can get our pots going with. I'm gonna turn our eye off. I'm gonna take our broth as slowly as possible and pour it into the center. And when you use fresh herbs, you get a better like flavor profile than like just tasting Italian seasoning. Okay, so then we want to let that cool.
Okay.
Let that cool for a little bit, and then you can store it. And so with storing it, you can put it in a mason jar. You can put it in deli cups. Anything that you may have laying around at the house. So a deli cup that looks something like this. So let it cool for like 10 minutes, and then you can pour it to whichever container that you want to pour it in, and then you can store it. So once you put it in the refrigerator, you have at most about 7 to 14 days in refrigeration.
Okay.
When you put it in the freezer, things are better used in 30 days of being in the freezer. However, you can get up to about 3 months of a frozen broth in there.
Okay.
So these are cool things to like stock up on and like you can have a broth that had vegetables from the spring that you whip out in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, I love that. Just a little final. There it is.
Yeah, here's mine.
I'm super excited to eat this. I have just loved collaborating with you, have loved being in conversation with you via, and really look forward to the future, being in community in the future, learning more together, sharing more together. I'm really grateful that you came. You were super open to this experience, and that you taught us some really valuable things, some knife skills, some kitchen safety skills, some like really foundational things, as well as how to make this delicious vegetable broth. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It has definitely been a pleasure, and just getting more comfortable and giving this knowledge off, like really feeling sustained in knowing that I've learned the information, and that the most important thing to learning something is sharing that knowledge. And so I appreciate you so much for giving me space, letting me find my new twin on the West Coast. So I can't wait to come out there, come out there and hang out in the Bay.
Yes.
And I've had fun. Like this has been a great. I think we've been collaborating for like a month now, so this has been a really great month. Something I'm always looking forward to like come talk and hang with you. So I'm glad I got to share some skills with you and share some skills for whoever's going to watch, our session and make them a broth.
Mm-hmm.